Hey everybody, welcome to episode 10 of our Tech Talks. My name's Chris. I know you can't see me right now. I'm Bodie, the IT guy. We're going to go through some stuff. Of course, this is the AV Educates Tech Talk on audio tonight. Go ahead and let's get rolling, guys. So, of course, this is AV Educate. You're only as good as your crew is our motto. Episode 10, as I said, we're going to be doing audio talks with Ed. So welcome back. Thank you for checking us out. Thank you for being here. We greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to reach out to us if you have any other topics you want us to talk about and things like that. Obviously, big shout out to the creator of AV Educate for helping us put all this on and everything like that, Omar Kalom. Myself, I am the streamer guy, our IT guy, Toxic Biowolf, Bodie, whatever the hell you call me, just don't call me late for dinner. But anyway, I'm here to process all this. The brains behind it all is Ed tonight. Ed is our presenter. He is going to be doing the audio talks for tonight. He's going to walk us through everything we could possibly think of in a short amount of time. I'm putting a lot of pressure on him, but you get what I mean. We're going to do some tech talk funs. Like I said, house rules are normal. We go Facebook Live every Monday night. To join the Zoom, it'll be put in chat if you want to join, and how to get involved. The next slide, sir. Please. Thank you. Due to the nature of streaming, obviously things are lag behind. So we're typically about 15 to 20 seconds behind. We will do a Q&A and try to get to everybody's questions and get everything answered as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible for you guys. No questions stupid. We don't know everything. That's why we do these. We collaborate with everybody so we can get as much information as possible to give it out to you guys. So again, don't ever think a question is stupid. We are going to be doing our presentation, the Q&A, like we kindly do. And then, of course, any shameless plugs afterwards about following the Facebook page, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Get involved because that's where all the information goes. Omar, you got anything before we get going?
I do not, man. I'm going to let Ed kind of take over and do his thing.
All right. Ed, it's all you, man.
Excellent. Sorry, I was just had that muted for a second while Bodie went through our intro. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see so many great faces, so many of my friends here. I invited some audio people so that when I say the wrong thing, they can correct me and make it right, so we don't give anybody any bad information. Like Bodie said, we don't know everything. So what I'm going to be talking about tonight is things that I have found work for me, along with the fundamentals of audio. There's many ways to do things. So, you know, if something I'm explaining is not how you do it, maybe what you do works for you, but maybe try what we're talking about, because I've done a lot of trial and error on these things to come up with the best ways to go.
We don't know everything.
To jump right into it, one of the things I said we would talk about is microphones and what they are. So the way you're hearing me right now is I have a lavalier microphone on. The way you're going to get any audio into your streams. There's tons of types of microphones. I brought out a couple examples. As we've seen on previous episodes, I've got my really nice SM7D. So that's what you're hearing me talk on right now. This is a dynamic microphone. It's a known for broadcast. Right now, that would be some uses for it. It sounds really great on guitar. So if you haven't tried that, give that a shot. These things sound great. They do have a pretty low output though. So in my chain, I have what's called a cloud lifter.
All right, I'm gonna have to stop for 1 second. We are having some audio issue. You're not getting, your sound is very low coming out, and then. So, yeah, the Facebook feedback was me, guys. I apologize. I'm trying to hear Ed to make sure the sound was coming through, and it was very low.
Very low. Okay.
So, and I have it turned all the way up on the mixer, so.
You know what keeps happening is every time I switch an input, Zoom changes me back to their settings with all the fun echo canceling. So is this any better? Are you guys hearing me better now?
You're a little low to me.
Okay.
I can't hear you at all. We're doing audio show and having technical difficulties, guys. Give us 1 second, please.
Is Zoom on auto level?
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. Just double check it, Ed.
I will, because Zoom likes to screw things up on you.
I think auto levels would bring them up.
No, everything's actually they're disabled, so they shouldn't be doing everything except auto cancellation.
I can say this much, Ed. When you switched to that SM7B, there was no change in the mics. And
Did not
that
change.
mic would have obviously been apparent when you went to that SM7B. So there's
I didn't
something
hear you
in
tap on
chain
the
that's
lav either.
yeah.
Lesson 1, troubleshooting.
No sound at all there, right?
Very good.
Totally silent.
No sound.
I'm getting. You guys aren't hearing me with this.
Yeah, a little bit. Super quiet. Dead. Nothing.
Yeah.
Dead. Nothing.
You can keep an eye on the meters over my shoulder. When you see them light up, you know you're feeding us.
There we go.
That's it.
There you are.
Chad, how's that? Everybody give me a thumbs up or just say yes if you can hear him better.
That's see, when you test out the other device and then forget to go back to your actual sound card. So now we should be able to hear me on the SM7B.
Yes.
Yes, there we go. All right, guys. I've done audio. I've done audio once or twice. So
Just a little hot.
yeah, kill my lav there.
First test passed. Exactly, Joseph.
That's right.
Okay, so this is the SM7B. This is what you guys have heard me talk on many times before. It does look like I'm still hot. So that should be a little bit better. Great. So again, dynamic mic, if you missed everything I was saying before, this is known for broadcast. It also sounds great on guitars, in case you guys missed me saying that earlier if it was too quiet. So I'm going to move on to a Beta 58. This is a Beta 58. You might see this on stage. This is a mic I enjoy using when I used to play in bands. It's got a presence boost, and I have kind of a low voice, and I used to try to sing high, so it would help me cut a little bit. But this is another dynamic mic. They're sturdy. It's like
hold up. Did you say you used to sing?
No, I did not. You
I
completely misheard that.
I don't.
I
think
heard him. I heard him.
Okay. We might need an example of this.
No, we don't. I can promise.
Yes, we do.
You guys are all on the internet, so have at it. Nothing I can do about it. So this is an SM57. I'm sure we've all seen these microphones before. Another dynamic mic. Great for use on guitars. I've heard rumors that Madonna used this on some studio albums. Maybe Andy or one of you guys knows any truth or fiction to that. Great on a lot of instruments, kind of like a Swiss Army knife of microphones. You can use it on a whole bunch of different things, horns, things like that. Another dynamic mic. It's very similar to a SM58, the difference being the windscreen. So moving on.
The 57 is also what the President of the United States used for 10 years.
Okay.
Until recent. Last maybe 2 presidents.
Yes. Yes. So I have some knowledge, and I don't want to screw it up, but sometimes those were not always 57 guts inside 57. So there's been a lot of for presidentials, and sometimes it was one real 57 with one not. So this is a condenser microphone. This is a Beta 87C. The C in that model number stands for cardioid. They also make a Beta 87A, which would be a supercardioid. That Beta 57 and Beta 58 were both A's also, so they were supercardioid. What that means is the polar pattern. So how this mic picks up. So imagine facing the mic. You don't really hear me so well from behind, right? You can hear me, but I'm kind of muffled. So it captures like a ball. Imagine like a spherical ball in the shape of a heart. So actually, it would look like this. That was a really horrible example, but the thing with supercard, this is a cardioid, so that's that would be the shape. Actually, there's a picture of the polar pattern right there. Now the difference with like that beta 58A, there would be a little node where it does pick up in the back. So that's the difference. We'll talk a little bit more about polar patterns in a few minutes. But this is a condenser microphone, so it requires phantom power. What is phantom power? So phantom power is DC power that's provided over the XLR cable from the mixer, from the preamp, or from a external phantom power supply. Puts 48 volts on pins 2 and 3. Requires ground in the microphone cable. We'll talk about cabling in a few minutes. And it powers. It's a different type of circuitry that's in these microphones. There is a capacitor in there, and it's a wafer instead of a diaphragm. So it's a little bit of a different design. Typically, condenser microphones are more sensitive, and they have a wider frequency response. So they can pick up more low things and more high things than a dynamic microphone that has a heavier diaphragm in it, which is when you talk, the sound waves push on a diaphragm, or in this case, a wafer, and that movement is converted into electrical energy. So without getting like too technical, condenser microphones get better detail, and they're more accurate across the spectrum of frequencies that we can hear. Moving on, I have one more condenser microphone.
Ed, can I ask you a quick question about phantom power before you move ahead?
Absolutely.
I just had a mixer that I was checking out by Rockville, a little Rock Mix 5 that had a 16 volt phantom power supply on it. And I was or 18 volt, I'm sorry. And I've seen 24 and 48. So where would these come into play? Is it just the power of the mic, the size of the condenser mic? You know, where do these different voltages work out?
Yeah, so phantom power can be a variable voltage. Andy, one of the Andys might be able to talk about this a little bit. Of course, I'm going to pull you guys in for information if I want to bunt on it. But it has an 18 volt. You sure it was the phantom power supply and not just?
Correct. That is correct. It was running a 5 volt USB power supply to the mixer, but then it had its own phantom power that it created with a, transponder. Why can't I think of the word? The little coil that. I can't think of the name of it.
Leland, did they call it?
Thank you.
I'll jump in on this. I actually added
ahead,
phantom
Jay.
power to consoles when I was back in the soldering days. The reason it's that voltage is that's the voltage coming from the wall wart, and they're just passing it right to the preamp. It's just a shortcut, cheap way to do it. And most condenser mics will work down to like 12 volts. But some of the higher end studio type mics, they really like the 48 volts. So if they're advertising at less than 48, that means it won't work every time on every mic. But most of the time it will.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. That's kind of the answer I was hoping for.
Phantom power can be all over the place. All voltages all the way from 1.5 volts up to 100 volts or more. So you really want to make sure you're matching your microphone's spec with whatever you're plugging it into. They also have a thing called plug-in power, which is an old Sony term that they used for their microphones, which I think were just like a bias voltage. You see that on computers as well. They use a little bias voltage of about 3 volts. And it all depends on what the power supply can produce. So some mics can work with that and some can't.
And just to confuse this conversation more, there's also, I think it's called T voltage or T power, which is a different scheme that some of these old NAG recorders used to use, things like that. They're less common now. You don't see them much, but the the microphones that require that type of power are still around. They're just, and again, they're not very common, but at least it's good to know about those things just in case they come across your way.
Are you referring to like the old 4-pin XLR cables that had an actual power lead in the cable?
You know, I'm not sure because it's been a long time since I've used one of those.
Be a while back.
But if you look at an old Nagra recorder, it may have a switch that turns on that type of power. Again, it's very uncommon these days, but the microphones are still around. It has more to do with those recorders.
Thanks, guys, for all that input. So the mic now that I'm talking on, you're hearing me with, is a AKG C1000. It is another condenser microphone. These things are big. I used to use a pair of these for overheads until they were just too ungodly big for me. But that's what they sounded good on. I've used them on guitars, like acoustic guitars, things like that. Again, condenser mic, so it has more detail. This particular mic comes with a couple different capsules that change the polar pattern. So this can go from a cardioid to a supercardioid. Right now, I believe I have the cardioid capsule in there. Cool. So I'm going to go back to my lav. Another type of mic which I don't have to show you is a ribbon mic. I actually like ribbon mics for a lot of uses. It uses, instead of a diaphragm or a wafer, it's got a very thin metallic ribbon inside. They're very delicate. Royer makes some good stage-worthy ones that can handle going out live, but they're mostly in the studio, ribbon mics. I actually really like ribbon mics as overheads, especially in the studio. If anyone's ever heard any of like the Tool, the band Tool, their albums, their cymbals are so like thin and splashy. They're definitely not using ribbon mics on that. If you listen to like some older like Motown stuff, there were probably some old Coles ribbon mics on there, and they just sound. I'm a big fan of taking a mic, like a ribbon mic's usually typically darker. It also has what's called a figure 8 pattern. So this is another dynamic mic. This is not a ribbon mic. This is actually not this is a dynamic, but this is a side address supercardioid mic. This is a E609 by Sennheiser. But a ribbon, I'm using it just to show, a ribbon mic would pick up from the front in a circle and from the back and reject from the sides. That's a figure 8 pattern. So they tend to be a bit darker, which is why I like to put them on cymbals. I typically try to pick a microphone that has the characteristics that I want to emphasize on something. So if I have a singer and like a female singer and has a lot of high end, high mids and high end to her voice, I don't want to put a mic on it that's going to capture a ton of high end because that's already present in the vocal. I'm going to get something that's going to get some of the low mids so that it fills out the sound. So with cymbals, where cymbals are already high end and splashy, I'll put ribbon mics because they're not going to get that washy, warbly sound that they're going to be, I want something that's going to counterbalance that. So when I think about mic choices, like I said, with the Beta 58, I use that as a vocal mic for myself because I have a deeper voice, and when I try to sing anything high, I want to cut through. So instead of getting a mic that already has a lot of low end sound to it, which is I'm already producing that, I get something that does the opposite.
There we go with him saying he can sing again. I'm telling you, before the end of the show, he's gonna sing.
I didn't say I can sing. I said I have sung. So I have completely hurt people's ears and had people leave concerts wishing they had never even heard music in their life. That's the kind of singing I've done. So just to show a few more examples of microphones, this is a Sennheiser E602. This is a kick drum microphone. I don't really like it on kick. I put it on bass guitar cabs, and I like it a lot better. I actually have a little bit of an obsession with drum miking, so I own a ton of kick drum mics. Ori actually has my Beta 52A still. This is an old D12E for the Andes. This thing is awesome. I have 2 of these. Amazing kick drum mic, very old. Nothing like the D112 or the newer AKG D12 that they came out with. This is a Sennheiser E604. This is a clamp-on drum mic. Great for toms. Some people use them on snare. I don't really love it on snare. The Beta 57 is my snare mic of choice. And along with that Beta 52, whenever possible, I also use a Beta 91 inside the kick drum. So Andy, you're getting your 2-hour talk of just kick drum mics. This is my go-to if I can do 2 mics on the kick drum. If I can only do 1, then I stick with the Beta 52. Cool. So those are some microphones and some of their uses. Dynamic microphones. For many of you guys doing streaming at home, I've seen guys who are doing really great with something like a C414, which is a condenser mic in the ballpark about $800, I think. I love C414s, though. That's another Swiss Army knife kind of mic. You can use it in so many situations. It has selectable polar patterns. It has some pads on it, and roll-offs on it too. So a pad would be something where you can it has a resistor in there and it can reduce the level. So if something's super loud, you can bring it down at the mic, which is nice. And then it's got a roll-off, which gets rid of some of the low end. So like if I go back to my SM7B here and I start shaking the mic stand or tapping on it, that low end, actually I already have a roll-off on there, but any of this stuff, you can get rid of some of that right from the mic, which is really nice. So I've seen that used very well, but the people who I've seen do that well have good equipment backing it up. I think a lot of people, the dynamic mic, you don't have to have an SM7B. Who was it? Ori is using an SM58, and I think for Ori, if you don't mind just saying.
Oh yeah, sure. It works pretty well for me.
Yeah, I think sometimes you could even back off a hair from it. I think when you.
Oh yeah.
Because sometimes it overloads whatever front end you have, whatever preamp you got going on. But one of the really nice things, like with the, if I go back to the SM7, there's a thing called proximity effect. So as you get closer to a mic, besides it getting louder, it gets more low end. So that's why this is used in broadcasting a lot. This mic is great with proximity effect. And this filter gets rid of a lot of those plosives, the P's and the B's. You don't hear them too much. But it sounds nice and smooth because of that proximity effect. I can get really close to this mic, and it sounds good. Now, if I back much further away, you can still hear me, but you don't hear as much of the bass in my voice. So the closer you are, the more proximity effect you get. That's common of any directional microphone, something that's cardioid, hypercardioid, omnidirectional microphones where they pick up on all sides equally, don't suffer from proximity effect. So a lot of lavaliers or on Broadway, even some of the headsets that they use, the little mics, those will be omnidirectionals because it doesn't matter how close it is to the source, it's going to sound the same as if it was a little further away. The volume won't be there, but the tonal characteristic of it are going to be the same. So are there any questions here about microphones before we move on?
Actually, you just brought up a good point. Why don't you talk a little bit about off-axis response, since you talked about the tonal characteristic?
That is a great point. So going back to the Beta 58. So as I said, this is a Beta 58A, so it has a hypercardioid pattern. That means it's narrower and longer. So they don't put a nice little picture on this one. It also has a little bit of a lobe in the backside. So if I'm talking right into this, you get that, and as I get closer, you see that proximity effect. But as I start moving to the side of the mic, you can hear that it gets very different until it's kind of muffly, and then I come back around, and now I'm back in the front, and the same thing if I go to the other side. As soon as I get over to here, I'm in the null point. These particular mics have a null point that is 120 degrees wide, so from here and here, it doesn't pick up as much sound. That's another reason I like these on stage, is because I will put my wedge monitor about 60 degrees off center from me on either side, and then boom, I have the wedge in the null of the mic, so it's not picking up what's directly behind it in that axis. But thank you. That was a great point to bring up. So when you talk into a mic, you want to talk into a mic. One of the other things that I'm going to mention now, you may notice I'm holding this microphone by the handle of the microphone, the body. I am not holding it like I'm a rap star. I'm not cupping the mic. And you may see many famous people do this, and you can probably hear the tonal difference. It definitely gets, more low end. When you do this, this actually makes this mic a little more omnidirectional. So as I move around, it's a little less tonal. Because you're blocking the vents in the back that give it that polar pattern. So you're going to make this a little more prone to feedback if you're using it on stage and you're cupping it like this. So if you want to grab it by the handle. That's totally fine. This is not fine. Nat, you got a question?
Yeah, can you hear my dynamic microphone okay?
I can.
So I just wanted to amplify one of the comments I saw on the Facebook thread. Dana was saying that in voice acting, or if you're doing narration, or if you're recording a book on tape, sometimes, especially if you're using one of those like really fine condenser microphones, you will actually want to speak off axis because speaking directly into such a sensitive microphone, right, it'll pick up more of the plosives that way. And if you're in a great studio environment, maybe, how would that change, how you would approach miking your voice?
Right. So that's a great point. Yes. Often for like ADR or voiceovers too, they'll position the mic up higher so that the breath is going past the mic underneath, as opposed to down here and getting all that wind right on it. Somebody has a windscreen, I think. Lena, do you have a windscreen on that mic, or a pop filter?
I do. I have a pop filter on mine.
Right, you have a foam pop filter. I thought somebody had or Omar, is that a pop filter?
Jason, I think, can run and grab one really quick.
There you go.
You're seeing the one in my background, Ed. That's just
what
an
I'm seeing.
image of one. It's an image of a pop filter.
Perfect. Well, that's great for an example. So, in something that you could recommend on Facebook, whoever had that point about speaking off axis, if you have a pop filter like what's in Leland's background, that will catch, and what Jason I think just went and got, that will catch a lot of that air and relieve some of those plosives that we're talking about. Jeff, it looks like you had a question.
Yeah, I'm reflecting back. Am I echoing?
Nope, you muted though.
Okay, thanks. I'm just reflecting back in time that when I used to watch people on stage and go, how in the world are they able to set those mics up right smack in front of those monitors on the stage, only to come to learn about, the directional pickups and so forth. And then when I started jumping into it, is having musicians and especially vocalists who would then not understand the microphones and literally like let the mic drop and feed the monitor, if you will. And so that direction is essential in the sense of good quality maintained.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into not getting feedback when you're on stage with a lot of stage volume and stage monitors. The use of graphic EQs, which I don't have an example of one here. I can pull something up on one of the mixers later. But we'll actually bring the level of the microphone up until it feeds back, and we'll pull out the frequencies that start squealing. That's more advanced than what I was going to talk about tonight, but it's a great point. Doing those things, all of those things is what you need to do to put on a great show when you're on stage. There's a lot of factors. I've done monitors a ton over the last few years, where that's all I was doing. I was the monitor person. So that was what my responsibility is. But for many years, I was mixing front of house and monitors from the same desk, back in the analog days too. So I always had my own wedge queued up so I could hear any of the wedges that were on stage. I could solo it after fader listen, AFL, which means I'm listening to exactly what their mix was. And then I'd be able to make adjustments because I'm hearing what they're hearing. If something started feeding back, I'd have access to the graphic EQ. But yeah, no, that's it's a lot of time and a lot of effort sometimes to get those things right. Great. Are there any other questions? Is there anything from Facebook that I need to address?
So yeah, there was one. I don't know if it was a question, but it was more of, I guess, a general comment about someone's favorite pop filter was a wool sock. Is that a thing in the audio world?
So this, like a sock would be what Bodhi had. I've never used a wool sock. But yeah.
Yeah, they're saying that their favorite pop filter is a Winter's wool sock.
Huh. Okay. If it works, it works.
In the film capture market, they put those big furry Zeppelins and things.
Right.
They may be referring to
the dead cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the dead cat.
Yeah, like on the shotgun mics and yeah, gotcha.
So I guess we can call that a pro tip.
Yeah.
Well, the question is then, what do you use in the winter when you need your socks on your feet?
You got to make a choice, bro. Production quality or warm feet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Show must go on, socks must come off. That's all there is to it.
Cool. So
I have a question, Ed, just a real quick one. When it comes to the fact you were showing all these different mics, and some of them you specified specifically for instruments. So what classifies a mic as an instrument mic versus a vocal mic? Is there something there that frequency range? What are we looking for when it comes to an instrument?
So that's a tricky question. There are some mics that are specifically, no question, they're a vocal mic. There are some mics, like kick drum mics, you wouldn't want to sing into. I've known some hardcore metal bands that have used kick drum mics to sing into. I didn't really think they got great results from it, but hey, that's what they were doing.
I guess let me ask it this way: is it rather than getting 20 kilohertz to 20,000 or 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz range, maybe taking you from 50 hertz to 15 kilohertz? Is that what's happening in these mics? That is.
So some of them do have a different frequency response. So if you think of, like you said, what we can hear is about 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So if you thought of that as a flat line, the frequency response would be on a mic this is totally messing me up because I'm looking at my camera, which is like not backward. So I'm hoping this is coming out left to right the right way. So at the low end, it would rise up, and then hopefully it's pretty flat. You may have a bump, for some presence. It's kind of hard to show without actually having one. I should have had one ready to show you guys. But yeah, so different mics will have different frequency responses. Some of them may pick up, like a kick drum mic is great at picking up low frequency. It's got a bigger diaphragm, so it can do that. Also, a lot of like the Beta 52 has a heavier diaphragm. So, just like anything, it takes more mass to move it, but it also takes more to slow it down. So you get the wave is longer than if you had a small diaphragm that reacts quickly. So it's just, there are different characteristics, and some mics are just have the characteristics for certain instruments better than other things. Like I said, the C414, I think that can do a lot of things. Where, like I said, that 602 that is supposed to be it's a kick drum mic. I don't like it on kick drum, but I like it on bass cabs. So there's a lot of things you just find that work. Look like Dave wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think some key things when you're looking for a vocal mic versus an instrument mic is going to have a wider dynamic or frequency range. So it'll get the high highs above the vocal range and the low lows above the common vocal range. Most of those are condensers. You can also just look and see if a mic has the handle. It has the windscreen built in, like the SM57 doesn't typically be considered a vocal mic, because if you talk right into it, it's going to pop into it. You can usually use instrument mics for both if they're positioned right. Vocal mics also tend to have a presence peak. A lot of them do. So up in that part, it'll peak it a little bit. So for people that are more soft-spoken, they have a little less of, it enhances that and enhances the intelligibility. So those are kind of the two factors: the form factor of the handle and the windscreen and the presence peak.
Yeah, the handling noise is actually a huge thing. If you ever had a very cheap handheld microphone, something you found on Amazon for like $20, and you hold it and you hear rattle, 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 or everything just sounds like you're banging on it. That's going to be because the handling noise isn't very good. Let me see if I can.
It's a good point you just made, because I just bought a $20 Newer mic, that NEEWER brand on Amazon, for karaoke mics over here. I was a KJ for several years, and I realized when I had them here in the studio, you could hear that banging in the actual, the carriage of the mic. It was, whenever you tapped it, you hit the stand, anything, it was echoing all over the place, so I couldn't use it in the studio. And that was the reason for my question.
You can also look for SPL handling. Like when, Ed, when you held up the little drum mic with the clip,
yep,
that mic can handle a phenomenal amount of sound pressure level that, say, an mic designed for overheads or fine vocal work is not going to be able to tolerate being in that close of proximity to something really loud. It'll just pop out. It'll just crackle.
Correct. Yep. Exactly.
Ed, Sandy, I just wanted to add something to this, leapfrog off what some of the other guys said. Well, one is there's this great story about the great engineer Al Schmidt, who was doing the Duets album for Frank Sinatra back in the early 90s. And Bono from U2 was a guest vocalist on there. And Sinatra sang in some $1 million Neumann mic. I don't know what it was, or an old C12 or Sony, one of those things. And Bono insisted on singing into a 57. I probably had a windscreen on it, on the couch in the control room with the studio monitors blaring. And that's the vocal that's on that record, because that mic worked for him. It was the right tool for that job, for whatever reason. So it's a good story. The second thing I wanted to bring up was just that when I was coming up, I learned I had 57s for instruments and 58s for vocals. And if I was really lucky, I had a D112 for the kick or something like that. But there's just so much you can do with the right microphones for a band I'm talking about, and getting good gain structure and your low cut, the low cut or the high pass filter, whichever one you have. If you just get that right, that's like, I don't know, 50% to 75% of your mix. The band will sound good, and then everything else is, you can work on from there. But from a practical standpoint, I'm with you on this. Having the right microphones, using the right microphones can make a big difference. And then just getting those two other factors, gain structure and removing low end from anything that doesn't need that low end, can really help.
Thanks for that,
yeah,
Andy.
I'm glad you brought that gain structure. So if I don't know if I'm spotlighted, but I was able to pull up a frequency response curve. So as you can see, this is from the low end, the 20 hertz to the 20,000 hertz. This mic is not particularly flat from 100 hertz down. It's not too bad. It's got a little bump, a little dip, a little bump, and then comes down. And you can see its polar pattern. That's how you see these charts. It'll give you different dotted lines for different frequencies, which are here in the key. This is showing a hypercardioid where it has that little lobe in the back and then that little heart shape towards the front. This is a cardioid where it's just the heart shape. And again, it's at different frequencies. It's slightly different for that off axis that we were talking about with that. So
I'll just make a note. The bottom line that's a really jagged and wavy, that's called the off-axis response. So that's what it sounds like from the back, where you don't want to talk into it. Exactly. And you see that it's not very even. And
that's where you're talking about this.
Why it sounds weird, yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. So let me just flip my cameras back. I got a lot of things happening here. Cool. Great. So, so much talk about microphones. I didn't plan for that much time on mics, but it's a good topic. Now, microphones, so we talk into them. How do we hear them? So microphones put out a very small amount of electricity. It's like millivolts. It's tiny. So you need to do something to get that level up. You would use something called a preamplifier that amplifies that mic level. And I think it was Andy who said, or Andy or Dave, one of you guys said gain structure. So that's one of the things that I think can help people the most is getting proper gain structure in their setups. I've seen so many techs in breakout rooms where they don't even look at a meter. They turn the gain knob until they're like, oh yeah, that sounds about right. And they bring the fader, and either the fader's like really low or it's like pegged. And it's never great in those situations. And that's because they're not practicing good gain structure. So what we mean by that is getting an appropriate level in so that you can do any of the processing you need to do within the mixer, or once you get it into your DAW if you're recording. And then the next things in the chain will have appropriate level, and you want to maintain that throughout. You don't want to like if you're using a lot of plugins and you're going into it hot on the first one and then you're reducing the level and then you're too low going into the next one, that's not good gain structure throughout your whole chain. And you can be not doing great things for your audio. You could be doing better things if you understood that. So one of the things I did want to touch on was how to set up good gain structure. So what I'm going to do is switch over to
really quick. We have a few questions
on
the
sure.
Facebook. One of the questions, I'm sure it was not meant to be a real question, but do you need to wear a pop filter when the speaker is wearing an N95 mask?
As long as you're more than 6 feet away, and if you're outdoors, I don't think so.
Okay. And then the other one, how do you feel about mic connections, USB to 1/4 to XLR, and mics that only use one or the other?
Okay. You know what? I did say I was going to talk about cable. So maybe we should talk about cable before
I can cover that if you want to work on switching over.
Yeah, sure.
There's really one professional standard, which is XLR, and all the industry is standardized on the 3-pin XLR for the most part. Now, when you get off into recording stuff, they've got mini XLRs and the Blackmagic stuff and things like that. You're in the consumer realm with the 1/8 inch, which is like the mini headphone jacks, and it's just not going to be as reliable or quiet a connection and won't go as far without noise coming into it, radio interference and things of that nature in the cables. And USB is great if you're just going straight from a mic into your computer. That's perfectly fine. But if you're wanting to go 50 feet into your computer, you probably need to get an XLR mic, run XLR to a USB interface right at the computer. You don't want to try to extend USB past normal 3-6 foot cable. Right. That anyone disagree? Feel free to.
No, just my experience. As everybody knows, I'm the resident streamer here on Facebook and everything. And from my experience, from my mic, I went away from USB and any 1/8 inch connections or any 3-pole connectors. I went and got a Go XLR, and that hooks up. It's a mixer that hooks up via USB to my computer, so I can actually program it through my computer to set my levels audio-wise and everything like that. But it allows me to use any XLR mic I want. Now, right now, I'm using a cheap Zingu mic. Everybody always asks me what kind of mic I'm using. It's just a cheap Zingu mic, and that allows me to connect it to the mixer and adjust all my levels and everything.
Great. So, as Dave was talking about, this is a 3-pin XLR. Sorry, put that in there. Male and female. These are a locking type connector. And if we look at a microphone, the female end, there's a male end on the mic, and they lock together like that. So that's the professional standard that Dave was telling us about. There are all sorts of different adapters and things. I picked this up off of Amazon instead of making one because I haven't had time to make one. But this is a female XLR to what is called TRS. So let's see if you can see that. There is a tip, a ring, and a sleeve. T, R, and S. This one happens to be wired where there's different pins on the XLR. There's pin 1, which is ground. There's pin 2, which is the positive, and pin 3, which is the negative, or the cold, so hot or cold. And those happen to be wired the way we would expect them to be for a balanced audio signal, which would be pin 2 to tip, pin 3 to ring, pin 1 is to sleeve, which is the shield. So this, I bought 2 of these, and we're going to see one in action later for the A10 Mini Pro. The A10 Mini Pro will take mic level in. If you set it that way in the software, it'll take balanced mic in. So I bought this to connect to a regular XLR microphone with an extender, because this would be a very short cable if I had to keep my head this close to my A10 Mini. And in testing it, it works fine. This is a 1/4-inch TRS, so you can see the tip, the ring, and the sleeve a little bit better, hopefully. And that's just a TRS to TRS. This would be a balanced line level cable, most likely.
Can you just quickly touch on balanced and unbalanced for everybody that might not be familiar with that, Ed?
Yes, I was going to get to that. So I was looking I had a guitar cable in my patch, but this will show. So this would just be a TS connector. There is just a tip and a sleeve. There's no middle ring on this one. So this happens to be a speaker cable, so it's not. So it's unbalanced. It's also unshielded. So for balanced audio, which is what you want. Sorry, let me switch back. Balanced audio, which is what you want with a microphone. It uses, as I said, a positive and a negative. So it's the same signal, just out of polarity with each other. So what that means is the positive will have a positive wave, where the negative will have a negative wave at the same time. So it's the same signal. They go like that. Wow. That's interesting when I'm looking at a camera that's not reversed. So what that does is that helps with noise rejection. When I mentioned shielded or not shielded, the shield, so the ground, it's actually usually a braided cable that has those two, the hot and the negative, inside them. And that shield, any like RF, which is radio frequency or electromagnetic interference, any of that stuff that's just in the air. There's so many waves that are just in the air. They, get picked up by that shield that runs through the cable, and then they just get dumped to ground. So they don't end up in your audio chain. When I talked about that speaker cable does not have a shield in it. It is just 2 conductors, hot and cold, just running through. so it's a little bit different. Does that answer
the rule of thumb on balance and unbalance is you want balance before your electronics, and you can go unbalanced after going to, like, from an amplifier to a speaker, because the voltage is 100 times more. You're going from millivolts to volts, and so the signal to noise ratio on that cable is so much significantly higher that you won't hear radio interference as much. And a lot of times they'll twist the pairs, just like in Cat5 cable, and that will cancel out some of that radio interference.
Yep, on the balanced cables, usually the pairs are twisted. Again, that having those out of polarity, that means if any noise does get introduced to those conductors, the key thing that we left out is when it gets to the end of where it's going from the microphone to like a mixing console, that pin 3 gets reinverted so that the two sum together, but any of the noise that came in is canceled. So that's how that works. It's very very misunderstood topic. People don't understand balance and unbalance, and just because you have an XLR cable, you have to know if it's wired correctly. And that's like this little adapter that I was showing before. I specifically got that adapter because of how it was wired. There's tons of these on Amazon that are not wired in this fashion. That's actually more likely than not you will find one that is not the right way, because it's set for mono, unbalanced, or taking, for example, if you've ever seen a cable that has 2 RCA or 2 XLR on one end, and then they go to one single, 1/8 inch connector, that's taking 2 things, and it's still probably 2 things at the mini side, but it will be unbalanced because there's no second conductor in that cable per channel. So I know that probably sounded confusing. If anybody has any questions on that in the Facebook, leave the question and I'll come back to it during the week to make sure I clear any of that up in case I made it more confusing for you by not having a chart to show you. Cool. Are there any other questions? Omar has a question, it looks like.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's a question I want to see if anybody or you or anybody in the panel can dive into. So Dana Tucker says -18 input is the best for input levels. My question is why?
Okay. That is an interesting, I see Dave is smiling, and that is a very interesting point to make. So -18, what, I'm going to, whoever asked that question, what was the name of the person?
Dana Tucker.
Dana. So I'm going to assume that Dana is talking about maybe a digital console, possibly. That would be what I would assume. Now, why do I make that assumption? Because I think he's talking about -18 dB full scale. Decibels, there are tons of decibels, tons of different types of decibels. So there's 2 different types of line levels. Well, there's 2 that we're going to talk about. So there's pro line level and consumer line level. So we will get to those. Let's stick with microphones and getting them into a preamp. So I've got a couple mixing boards set up here.
Really quick, there's a question that came out on Facebook, which is actually a really interesting question. I've actually heard this before, and I'd be interested to hear from the panelists, Dave and Leland and all them. It says, can running XLR cables alongside power cables be a bad thing? In the corporate world, we do this all day long, but this person recently spoke to a respected audio engineer, and he mentioned that's an absolute no-no. What are your feelings
I would
on
agree.
that, guys?
Good quality audio cables can handle it, but if there is a break in the shield, it can wreak havoc in your sound system for sure.
Right. So anyone who ever says absolutely don't do something, I always say, well, maybe, and maybe is the right answer. Typically, if a cable is well shielded and it's balanced, and you're going for a long run and you're running a long power, you should be okay. But as Dave said, if there's a break in that shield, well, now you've lost the ability to dump any of that noise that might be inducted from the power cable. but yes, in the corporate world, we do this all day long, every day. In the concert world, this happens all the time. So one good practice, if you have to cross a power cable with an audio cable to do them perpendicular, you're going to get the least amount of interference that way. So you'd have the audio cable, power cable. But if the cable's well made and well shielded, then this shouldn't really be as big a concern. Now, an unbalanced cable would be a concern, absolutely. An unbalanced line level cable, I'm going to say. An unbalanced speaker cable is not a problem, because speaker cables are less of a problem. They're carrying power. They're not gonna be as susceptible to picking up noise inducted from a power cable. Looked like Andy Lipnick might have had something to say.
I think Jeff was first. Defer to Jeff there.
Jeff, go ahead. We don't hear you, bud. Okay.
Actually, I guess I'll go until he gets it worked out. A couple of things. One is Dana, I see his comment there too. He did a follow-up. Yes, a digital board. It is the closest to 0 dB on an analog board. Depends on the piece of digital equipment, what its reference level is. That's a whole nother show. But yeah, the common ones are -18, -20, -12 for some of the location, I think, mixers as well and things like that. Back to the point about running cables along power, another good practice is, if you are running along power, just to put about 2 feet in a parallel line along with that. That is a good practice too. If you've got cable ramps, if you have to run power and signal through the same one, put the power on one end of the cable ramp. And, sorry, my dog is going nuts here. Put power on one end of the cable ramp and your signal on the other. Also, if it's a microphone signal, so it's very low level, like like Ed was talking about earlier, that's more susceptible to noise than a line level signal. And I think Dave touched on this too, with the various power that is going through the cable. And then one good case of that is in sporting events, where the sports truck, for example, might be like 1,000 feet from the microphone. And what they use is a line driver. So what they do is they'll plug the microphone into a box that boosts its signal up significantly, the line level usually, because that is a lot more powerful and less susceptible to noise being inducted into the line than if it were a very low level trickle of audio going 1,000 feet.
Yeah, I think the key is if you're putting a preamp at the receiving end of that cable, it will amplify the noise as well as the signal that you want. So it'll amplify whatever hum is coming out of that power cable. So that's kind of the rule. If there's not a preamp at the other end, like a passive speaker, that speaker is not going to, if it's a passive one, it doesn't have an amplifier, it's not going to boost up the electrical hum that's being inducted into that cable. If you've got a microphone preamp at the other end, it's going to turn it up, it could turn it up 60 dB. So you want to make sure it's clean as it can be and shielded from RF coming in. And, but I mean, it's not a hard, fast rule, never run them, because Whirlwind and some of the cable manufacturers actually make combo power and signal cables for powered speakers. I see them all the time, especially in corporate work.
Absolutely. Again, and if you're well shielded and balanced, it shouldn't be such a big concern. But obviously, if you are getting noise, that would be one of the places to look. If if you're able to lift that cable and get it away from your power cables, then all of a sudden the hum goes away. Well, the cable probably has a break in its shield somewhere, and that's where I would replace the cable.
One quick thing. I've always found it's worse if it's power lines that are after a dimmer, like going to feed lights from a dimmer rack.
Yeah.
Because it's varying. It's not this consistent 60 hertz of consistent power going through that cable. It's varying, and you've got maybe it's a Sockopex it's feeding 6 different lights at 6 different levels, and they're all humming basically in different frequencies. It's like a chorus of hum versus just one person humming one note, and that's where it kind of gets weird.
Right. I always try to separate audio from lighting as much as possible. Even my power. So I try to keep my audio power completely separate from my lighting power. So that's just a common practice. So back to this 18 dB thing. So this is where I wanted to go with gain structure.
Real quick, Jeff did have a question.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
More of a comment, and I'm not going to claim to be an audio expert, but plenty of time out there. But I want to make sure that I'm fair in saying it's not a fair assumption that if you have a balanced cable, you've got a solution without the equipment at the ends being involved, right? I mean, if you plug into an unbalanced jack, a balanced cable is not going to do anything for you. Where if you have a jack, I mean, they fit, right? 1/4 inch is 1/4 inch, but 1/4 inch comes in balanced and unbalanced, and there can be jacks that are unbalanced in the sense that they're not prepared to remove that noise when it gets there. And if you guys are going to have to back me up, is there the equipment on one or both ends has to be involved in the success of the noise cancellation over across an unbalanced.
That's correct. So yes, you would need to be plugging into something that is expecting a balanced input. The one thing that would still be helping mitigate some of that RF or EMI would be the shield of the cable, of the balanced cable, where like a speaker cable, which is why if anyone plays guitar and they've ever used a speaker cable that should go from their head to their cabinet. For their guitar, and it was noisy, it's because that speaker cable doesn't have any shielding to it. Your guitar cable is an unbalanced shielded cable, so it has some protection from RF and EMI, not as much as a balanced cable, but it still has some, that shield is designed to get rid of some of that noise, where the speaker cable just doesn't have it. It's 2 conductors just running side by side. Okay, am I good to move on? Omar.
So Joseph, I'm sorry, I lost it real fast. Joseph had a question about, I was diving into TS with him. What are all the applications for TS cables, and what shouldn't you use them for?
Okay, so TS would be tip sleeve. A guitar cable is going to be tip sleeve. That's about all I would use it for. I mean, not really. There's... I try to.
I see the hate for the tip sleeves.
It's not hate. It's just it's an unbalanced line. So in any professional production, I want to try to avoid unbalanced cabling as much as possible. That's just what it is. Because of all the reasons we talked about with the noise canceling. So, sure, use them for your keyboards to the DI box. Use them for your guitar to your amp. And all your pedals and whatnot. That's what that's what you're supposed to be using. If you used a balanced cable, it wouldn't give you any benefit because there's nothing to touch that ring contact on the TRS. So on some analog mixers, for example, I'm thinking about the one that I have set up behind me. The insert points it's a TRS, but it's an unbalanced, and it goes to 2 connectors. So if I had an insert that would have TRS on one end and then 2 TS on the other end to go into whatever, if it's a compressor or something. So there's not no uses for them. It's very limited what I would use a TS cable for if I have to. Dave, were you going to say something? Were you going to add a piece there?
Yeah, my rule of thumb is keep it under 6 feet. Right. Guitar is a little different, but if it's a short cable and it's not near power, keep it under 6 feet. That's kind of my rule for HDMI as well, but that's a different topic.
So the shorter distance, which again is just, the cable is basically an antenna. So if it's a shorter antenna, it's going to pick up less of the garbage that you don't want in your signal. An interesting thing with guitar cables is after 20 feet, you do start, because of the impedance of the cable itself, you do start losing some of your high end. So, you don't want to have a 50-foot unbalanced TS cable. At that point, you might want to get a wireless or something. But yes, that was a great point, Dave. Keep it short if you have to do unbalanced lines. So moving on, microphones, very low level. So gain structure is super important. So what I'd like to do, we'll get to that -18 thing. I'm going to show why that doesn't always hold true. I think it was Andy who said, there are variances between -18, -20, and I have a Behringer X32 here, which does use a nominal output of -18 on their meter, gives me my nominal +4 dBu, where my QL1, it's -20 on the meter, will give me my nominal +4 dBu. So that's two different digital boards, two different reference levels. So it's not always a hard and fast thing with those digital consoles that -18 is going to be the number. What's even more confusing with my QL1 is that the meter actually changes color at -18. So it makes it somewhat frustrating that they couldn't have just done it at -20. If any of you guys are familiar with ATEM stuff, -20 and -10 is where their colors change for input levels. A lot of video stuff is -20. There is I always mix it up. If it's Europe, it kind of settled on one, and the US kind of settled on another, but there's no real standard when it comes to DBFS. And I was just having a conversation with Justin, who's not here on the panel tonight, how he read an article the other day that he was going to link me to, where DBFS is basically a useless measurement. Dave?
Yeah, I think just to step back for guys who are kind of really new to audio, that we're talking about decibels, which goes back to like Bell and Bell Telephone, and it's comparing audio to a voltage measurement, and 0 is loud and negative numbers are less than loud. So you go from the loudest that the electronics can handle backwards in negative numbers to where it just gets hissy and noisy down in there and muddy.
Right. Yeah, I actually have something to show some of that voltage and how that works. But let's move on and talk about gain structure, because we have already blown through an hour. We're on AV Tech Talks, everybody. It's Monday night. We start at 7, and we usually try to do a hard out at 9. I have a feeling we might go past 9, but I'm going to try to keep it short. Just we've had a lot of great questions and a lot of great conversations, so I'm all for those things happening as opposed to just showing. So, but I do want to look at I have a couple consoles here, so I have to do this. Great. Well, I don't want to look at my meter at the moment, so let's look at that. All right. So this is you guys are seeing the Allen Heath, correct? The analog console.
Yes, we are.
Excellent. Good. I lost my second window for some reason, so I can't see. I just wanted to make sure you were seeing what I'm seeing. So, and then am I still there, Chris? You got me spotlighted.
Your picture. Let me see if I can get.
You're in the small window, Ed.
You're in the small window, but that's not on stream. Just so you know.
Oh, are you able to? Oh, okay. Got it. So, interesting. Okay. Are you able to do that or no?
I'm doing it right now. Just give me 1 second.
Awesome. I can't see it, so great. So what I've done here is I have a microphone set up. Sorry. Actually, you know what? I'm going to start with my Qbox, because I think this will be a better thing to show for that -18 question that we have.
You're in the shot now.
Excellent. So I have a Qbox. Qbox is a cool little tool. Lets you hear some stuff. It lets you see some stuff with audio. You can tell if there's phantom power. Like for example, this is my Qbox is connected to channel 2. So if I turn my phantom power on, you can see that those two lights came on, letting me know that there's voltage on pin 2 and 3. This also acts as a tone generator. It has a little speaker on it. Sorry, I have to actually turn the tone on. So you're hearing that tone through my lav, most likely. And let's see, where did I put MixWiz? So, great. So I brought the MixWiz up into that, so we'll be able to hear what I'm doing. So I'm going to actually bring the fader down. So if I hit my PFL button, PFL stands for pre-fader listen. This is like solo. So this would be how you would set your levels. So at the top, I have my gain knob. The first button is my phantom power. The next one is a pad switch. That's basically putting a resistor in line with the XLR input that's on the back of this to lower the level down. So I would take a line level on the XLR. This does have a TRS input for line level, which is not affected by the pad. So I've got my gain, and if I set on the meter, I can tell you I'm hitting 0 on that meter. So now if I bring this up, we should, no, for some reason I'm not getting into my console. Why am I not getting into the Yamaha? Sorry about that, guys. Give me 1 sec.
You were in it before, so I don't know if you want to just switch back to what you did. We heard the tone.
Well, you heard the tone from the speaker of my Qbox into my lav.
It was nice and crisp.
Yeah. I see what I did. I did not switch that to, before we get blasted, I didn't switch it to my Dante because I actually ended up plugging it into my Rio box. And that's just a patch on my end. Sorry about that. So now, are we seeing it? I see it there. You guys aren't hearing it though, are you?
You're not.
Nope.
No. Test number 2 incoming.
There we go. Okay, now you guys are hearing it, right?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's tone, right? So I'm sending that tone out. Now, if I get rid of my PFL, what happened? So I'm PFLing, I'm hitting 0. I've got my fader at unity, which is 0. I've got my master faders at unity. But it looks like I lost a few dB there. Now the -3 light is lit up. Because I'm only using my left output to go out to my speaker, to my QL1. So because of pan law, when you have stuff panned in the center, because of the summation of 2 channels, it reduces each of those. So if I have something panned up the center, because it's going to be going to 2 outputs, it is reduced by about between 3 dB and 4.5 dB, depending on the manufacturer, to each side instead of being full. So if I pan this full, you'll notice I'm outputting 0 dB now. So great, and you guys are hearing it. I'm going to keep sending it, but I'm going to take it out of the feed because we don't need to hear a ton of tone, a ton of 400 hertz. But I'm going to leave this going. So one of the things I have going on is I split off, and I've got my multimeter. So if I look at my MixWiz, and I actually measure the voltage coming out of here across pins 2 and 3. Now this is analog circuitry, and there's like a little bit of variance, but this should read. I have to actually look at this. So if I PFL this, those segments are 3 dB increments. So if I get myself, so I'm just lighting the 0. Now there we go. Where am I at? I'm at 108. I really want to be somewhere around 1228 ballpark. 1223 is fine. So there we go. So this is my nominal plus 4 dBu, okay? That we were talking about voltage. Oh, sorry. That's me moving around. There we go. We've got nominal. I don't know what the noise is there. Sorry. Okay. So I'm sending in and spitting out line level. I've just set this and calibrated. I'm going to mute that. Now, if I was going to take a microphone, sorry, take my PFL. So I've got a microphone that I have plugged into channel 1. So I'm going to PFL this microphone. Hey, hey, 1, 2, 2, 2. And I'm going to talk into it. Hey, hey, 1, 2, 2, 2. And I'm going to aim for that same kind of point of averaging in that 0 spot. Hey, hey, 1, 2.
We're still looking at the meter.
Oh, sorry about that. There we go. I have too many things to switch here. So now, if I'm going to mute my lab for a second. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I'm coming out of this microphone that you can see me talking into. I'm set at unity. I'm hitting unity here in the meter at PFL, and I'm just under that. I guess when I get loud, I'm hitting it on the output side as well. So I should be, in theory, coming out at unity when I'm hitting 0 on my master meter. Awesome. I can feed it to the next piece of equipment and know that I'm hitting good levels. So on an analog board, that's how I would set my level. I would use my PFL, hey, hey, 1, 2. See, every once in a while I go over, but I'm hitting my 0 for the most part. And if I have my, that would be why. So if I have my main fader, my channel fader, which I think you guys can see. Oh, you can only see the top of it. It's right here. It's at unity. Sorry, the camera doesn't have that much of a, it's only an old GoPro. But I assure you it's at unity. And then my master fader is where we calibrated it a second ago. And then you're hearing me. I assume you're all hearing me. If somebody can confirm that.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Excellent. I can't see you guys right now with the view that I have from Zoom. So excellent. So that would be how I set it on a analog desk. So I also happen to have, the big button that says fade to black. That's the one you don't want to hit when you're doing a demo. So I'm back on my lab now. So we're going to do the same or similar process with the X32 because I happen to have one of those sitting here. And that's what we're looking at right now. So,
and Ed, just to clarify, we went from an analog board to now a digital board, right?
Yes, now we're on a digital board. So the thing about the digital board, actually, I can do this, whatever. I can do it either with the Qbox or I can do it with the internal tone. But let's just do it with the Qbox because I have it in my hand. So I selected channel 2 and I soloed it. And I'm on the gain page. And I'm bringing up my input gain. Sorry, did I plug into the correct? Nope, that's why. Sorry, I plugged into 4, not 2. There we go. So, am I not? Sorry about that. Interesting. All right, we'll do it with the tone. So, sorry. So we'll set the oscillator for, the level is at -18 dB. And I am feeding output 7, mix 7, which we can see is here. And that's what's coming up to, there we go, the X32. So we hear the 1K tone from the Behringer X32. So I can stop soloing that. I can look at this. If I solo that, we're hitting -18 dB. So when I meter the X32,
want to switch to the meter view?
Yep. Let's do it next. So it's close. These X32s are what's the word? Not super consistent. So
Cheap.
well, they're just not. Their tolerances are not great. So it takes a little finagling, but
They're musical instruments, not scientific instruments.
exactly. So I can kill the tone. Well, sorry, I'll just kill the tone. So the negative 18 dB on this X32 happens to be where we want to be for nominal, as close. It's off by a couple points on the fader, which is, to be expected from that level of piece of gear. Hey. But we can do the same thing for setting a microphone level. So now I'll take my mic in. Hey, 1, 2. So we can see that. I have this mic on channel 1.
Switch back.
Oh, sorry. Too many things. Why is the audio guy doing video stuff? Hey. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey. So I'm going to set this. I have that soloed, and we can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey. This wants to be at about negative 18 dB for the Behringer. That's correct for this. One of the ways you can tell, Behringer actually puts in like an extra dB of headroom for peak, but they list their max output voltage, or their max output at 21 dBu. So if you and line level is plus 4 dBu. So the difference there is actually 17, right? 21 minus 4. So they actually say 17 dB. It turns out to be 18 dB. That's where you get the voltage. And this is how I would set a microphone going into this Behringer X32. I would solo it, set it so that it's hitting negative 18 on the meters. You can see in the gain page, I'm hitting the negative 18. On the Q, I'm hitting the negative 18. If you're going over every once in a while, it's fine, but don't be clipping. If you are redlining, that's not going to be a good thing. I'm sorry, are you guys hearing me double?
No, you're good.
No, you're good.
We're not hearing you from the mic in your hand at all.
We just lost you.
Sorry, now you can hear me. So, yep. So now you're hearing me through the Behringer. And this is what the same microphone I was talking to you before, the Beta 58, sounds like through the Behringer compared to what you just heard it through the Allen and Heath Mixwiz. So that's two different consoles, pretty much the same steps. I solo, which is on here, is also a PFL on the inputs. On the meter, because it's a different meter, where on the Allen and Heath, it's an analog meter and 0 is the number. Here on the Behringer, it's negative 18. And I can tell you on the QL1 that I have, it's negative 20 is where the output wants to be. In the interest of time, I may skip the demo on the of the same thing on the QL1, but know that I painstakingly recently went through and calibrated all of my outputs.
Ed, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When you're starting out, you're in a new room, you've got your board, and you want to set your input gain, you're starting your structure. Do you always use a tone generator? Do you use your voice? And if you use a tone generator, what is a good entry-level price people should expect to put out for one?
So, no, I do not use a tone generator to set microphone input levels on a show that I'm doing. I was just doing that to demonstrate what was going in was the same thing that was coming out. What I will use to check my outputs a lot of times is pink noise, just to verify that my speakers are getting some kind of signal. So I'll send pink noise to each output that I'm expecting a speaker to be connected to. Why did I lose my second Zoom? Oh, because it went and hid.
So if people do want to come up with some sort of tone generator or a pink noise generator or whatever. Should they use an app? Should they use a
yeah, there are a ton of apps on your phone if you wanted to do that. That's absolutely a viable thing. Pink noise is kind of pink noise. Tone is kind of tone. So yeah, there's apps you can do with that. The digital consoles will typically have some sort of oscillator that'll do pink noise and do tone generation. If I'm doing broadcast, I want to make sure that I send a reference level to any of my records, any cameras, so that they know what my zero is on the other end. So that's the whole thing, is making sure you're calibrated. So that's why we just kind of went through that. So that's why I spit out that tone. So I was able to show you what my reference level was on that meter, and then I know going out, as long as anything that hits the zero, or on the Behringer's case, the -18 on that meter, is going to be that voltage, which is true line level. So the next piece of gear is going to be getting a nominal input of what I'm sending.
So just to just to nail that point, then your reference level is whatever the use case is on the day, like a presenter speaking at a lectern, a singer up close to a microphone. Whatever that use case is how you want to set your reference level.
Yeah. So if I have records or broadcast stuff, I will send tone to the next thing down the chain, at the zero level. Then when I set my my microphone levels at that nominal input, I'm aiming to hit that zero with my source, with my whole mix. If I sent every microphone, let's say I had 10 microphones, they were all live at the same time, and I sent them all at zero, that adding up of all of those sources is going to go well over zero. So that's where you mix with your faders and you figure out where your mix has to sit. But I won't exceed the zero on my meter, because that's what I've sent to the next person as my reference. I mean, if you spill over a hair here or there, that's not going to